I am Merle Duskin-Kalis. I am a member of the YANA board, and I'm the chair of the 2023 Generation to Generation Gala and the Magnify Your Mission Conference, which will be held tomorrow. I'd like to welcome our esteemed honorees, distinguished Yale alumni, dedicated YANA members, valued partners, and guests, and if I've left anybody out, I'm really sorry. In a world where challenges abound, your presence here tonight reaffirms our collective belief in the power of connecting, convening, and collaborating. Through the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance, we have the opportunity to leverage our diverse talents, skills, and experiences to address some of the most pressing challenges facing our communities and the world at large. The impact we seek to create is not measured solely in numbers and statistics, but in the lives we touch, the communities we strengthen, and the future we shape. Each one of you brings unique talents, perspectives, and experiences, and it's this diversity that fuels our organization. Through our collective effort, we can dismantle barriers, empower the marginalized, and create opportunity where once there were only obstacles. We live in very challenging times. Let us pledge tonight and tomorrow during our conference to harness the power of unity. Let us commit to supporting one another, learning from each other, and amplifying our impact. The challenges we face may be daunting, but history has shown that when individuals come together with a shared purpose, incredible transformations can occur. Well, what would a welcome speech be without thank yous? So first, I'd like to thank the hardworking members of our committee, Astrid Andre, Samra Ali, Ugo Faria, Joellen Gray, Andrew Berge, Lisa Rieger, Patrice Yang, Daniel Goldman, it took a lot of us, Ken Inadami, Rachel Littman, and Leanna Epstein, yay. I'd also like to thank our top sponsors, the Yale Alumni Association, and Game Changers, Ken Inadomi, Trish Littman, in honor of Rachel Littman, and the Pi Foundation. Finally, thank you all so much for believing in education and service. Together, as the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance, we can create a legacy of positive change that will truly resonate from generation to generation. In the words of Yale's motto, Lux et Veritas, let us be the light and the truth in a world that often craves both. So now I'd like to bring up to the podium Ken Inadomi. As our founder, in only 11 years, he has led us from the back of an envelope to a worldwide organization of 9,000 members. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Great, thank you, Meryl. You know, an event like this doesn't happen without great leadership. And Merle, from the very beginning, it is our February retreat when she decided to raise her hand and say, I will chair the event. So how about a big hand for her? So welcome to the Fall Fundraising Gala for YANA, the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance. You know, I was telling someone earlier tonight that the last time I was at the Yale Club, standing in front of a crowd this big, was for my daughter's bat mitzvah. In 2003, ballroom on the 20th floor, and believe me, that was not a nonprofit event. But tonight is, and tonight's theme is Generation to Generation, which reflects the Hebrew phrase Lador Vador, and also the Japanese term dendro, passing to the next generation. At YANA, we feel that as an alumni association, there's no more important value that we can have to the university than to convey the important values from one generation to the next. After all, in this time of such fracture and dissent, what more important values are there than the tagline for YANA? The words are working together, giving back, and changing lives. During the pandemic, the New York Times did a feature on the acclaimed Yale professor, Laurie Santos, the so-called happiness professor, whose course on well-being set all-time attendance records. But Professor Santos was able to distill the secrets of happiness into 3 core pillars, and they are getting more sleep, practicing gratitude, and helping others. Well, I'm not sleeping very well lately. But gratitude and helping others are at the core of my inspiration, and I'm sure most of the people that are involved with YANA. Gratitude for the opportunity and the privilege that comes with a Yale education, and then channeling that gratitude into commitment to helping others. YANA started about 12 years ago, right here at the Yale Club. It was a snowy winter night, and a few of us got together to discuss how could Yale's nonprofit community be unified and leveraged for the greater good. And what started out as just a conversation has evolved, as Merle said, into really a global network. Over 9,000 alumni, friends, and family united, working together to try to make this world a little safer, healthier, and more just. And several major trends are driving our work. First is the continued rise in entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. People across all generations, they are dedicating their lives to figuring out innovative ways to solve our problems. Second is an intolerance for inequality, and I'm talking about inequities such as income, health, race, and gender. But the third major trend, and the one that really drives us, is that of a surge in volunteer engagement. People don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. They want to actually be part of the solution. And in this context, YANA's role is particularly important because we feel that our job is building community. I mean, look at the energy in this room. We had to turn away, I think, 50 to 60 people who wanted tickets, but there just wasn't capacity. We feel that one of our great strengths is the power to convene. And we always feel that when mission-driven and like-minded people get together, great things can happen. We talked about generation to generation, and this is really reflected in the value proposition for YANA. And let me explain this very briefly. For the millennials and for Gen Z, those that are in their 20s and 30s, just starting off in their careers, early stages of their careers, YANA provides internships, introductions, connections, and mentoring to help them get on the right track and build their personal networks. For Gen X, those in their 40s and 50s, typically at the height of their careers, they're the ones that are leading corporations and they're leading nonprofits. YANA can provide to them access to resources, including board members, funding, new hires, best practices, and best practices. And the key thing about that is we do this in a way that is holistic, and it's through the community that we've built. And for boomers, people like myself who are retired, semi-retired, or thinking about retirement, we want to give back, but we don't want our time wasted. And YANA provides a curated set of opportunities so that people can get engaged, whether it's coaching, mentoring, serving on boards, or fundraising. What's amazing is that we've been able to create a model that is really throughout the whole life cycle. At any stage, people can plug in and contribute and receive. And the important thing is it's not just the older generations from the younger generations. It's learning from the generations as well. And if you see our YANA board, we have people from the class of the 20s to old guys like me in the classes of the 70s. But we feel that as much as we've done, we have a long way to go. Because even though we may have been the first or maybe one of the only alumni nonprofit networks, we certainly don't want to be the last. Whenever another college or university contacts us and asks, how can we start our own YANA, we immediately send them our blueprint. Everything is open source. We would love to see our mission turn into a movement. And tonight, if there's only one takeaway that you have, I would like it to be this, that YANA also stands for You Are Not Alone. Together we are stronger. Together we can maximize our collective impact. And together we are building community. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Okay. Now, a couple thank yous. First, a huge thank you to the Yale Club for this beautiful setting. Isn't this incredible? Second, the Yale Alumni Association, the YAA. Whaley is here, Henry Kwan is here, I know Nicholas is here. I actually see Jeff Brenzel here from way long ago. But we would not exist if it weren't for the support of the Yale Alumni Association. They've really been incredible. And I also like the YANA board. Maybe if you guys can raise your hands. Big hand for them. But tonight is about celebrating 4 stars in the Yale constellation. 4 individuals who have dedicated their lives to making a dent in the universe, to making our world just a little bit better, each in their own way. We're going to salute Professor David Blight, the Sterling Professor of History at Yale. Sherry Wang, who's the managing director and the co-head of the Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group. Richard Beery, who's the CEO of the iconic New York nonprofit, the Robin Hood Foundation. And of course, our own Rachel Littman, our executive director, who's done so much for us over the past 5 years. But before all that, we have a welcome message from Yale's president, Peter Sullivan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to join you for the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance's annual gala. And thank you, Ken Adomi, for inviting me to provide some remarks. As the theme of this year's gala suggests, mission-driven work reverberates from generation to generation. And as you know, serving a cause greater than our own interests today is the surest way to enrich the world tomorrow. At Yale, this spirit of service is woven deeply into our DNA. In 1701, Yale became the first American university to inscribe service to society in its founding documents. And over the past 3 centuries, alumni like those faithfully involved in YANA have realized our highest ideals through positive social impact. You may recall that at your commencement ceremony, the president conferred on you all the rights and responsibilities of a Yale degree. Now, I'm especially proud of this language because it emphasizes Yale's focus on the responsibilities rather than the privileges that accompany our diploma. Of course, as a global research university, Yale is dedicated to advancing the frontiers of knowledge. But we also expect our graduates to mobilize what they have learned for the benefit of humanity. YANA and the slate of honorees we celebrate tonight exemplify this enduring aspiration. I think, for instance, of how Robin Hood's Richard Beery fuels permanent escapes from poverty, and how Sherry Wang of the Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group drives overdue change for underserved communities. Sterling Professor of History and Gilder Lehrman Center Director David Blight, meanwhile, has helped our community to reflect on its history and create a stronger, more inclusive Yale. And of course, I'm so pleased to recognize Rachel Littman, who will be stepping down as YANA's executive director after 5 years of exceptional volunteer service. Rachel's achievements reflect Yale's rich history of civic betterment. and I'd like to congratulate her on her accomplishments. I want also to applaud Rachel's colleagues on YANA's staff and board, as well as those who comprise its rapidly growing community of more than 8,000 members. Together, you are a force for good around the globe. And your inspired work is a point of much pride for all of us here in New Haven. So please accept my best wishes for a wonderful event this evening, for the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance's continued success for many years to come.
So Peter wanted to be here tonight, but I think he was busy running the campaign. By the way, we got three core kind of Yale pillars stepping down. Peter announced it. Wei Li, who we're going to hear from later, Wei Li Cheng is going to be stepping down as executive director, and of course, Rachel Lippman. But we know that with nonprofits, succession planning and leadership changes are inevitable. And when a nonprofit can recover from an announcement where a leader steps down and someone else can step up, they're very fortunate. So I'd now like to introduce Lisa Rieger, Yale class of '79, who a few months ago raised her hand to say that she would be our interim director. So we haven't been in a position to have to miss a beat because of Lisa's experience running nonprofits. She has been the chief counsel for the, got to get this right, the Cook Inlet Tribal Council in Alaska. Lisa's from Alaska, by the way, or lives in Alaska. She's from California. Lives in Alaska. She's been the chief counsel there. She's also been in the Public Defender's Office in Oakland. She's been a tenured faculty member at the University of Alaska. How about a big hand for Lisa Rieger?
Hi, everybody. I loved Yale. It was the only college where I wanted to go, except for Oxford, and my parents thought that was way too far away from Los Angeles. But what I love about YANA is that it's a Yale affiliate that is more about what we have all done since we left Yale than what we were there for, whether it was undergraduate or graduate school. And it still embodies the ethos and values that I associate with Yale and that we just heard from the president, and all the other speeches were all very consistent. We want to make this world a better place when we leave it than when we arrived. And I love that about us, and I love that about YANA. Now that I'm a woman of a certain age, I also really especially love the intergenerationality of it all. Rachel's legacy is huge, more about that later, but I'm committed to standing by Ken and the board's side to keep this momentum going and provide this important opportunity for the exchange of ideas and knowledge that is the DNA of this organization. I'd like to add my voice to the chorus of welcome and thank yous at this, our first in-person event since before COVID. It is thanks to the incredible leadership of Ken, the board, and Rachel in her volunteer capacity that we are here today. And that is more than in part because of the important and compelling nature of our mission. And we have so much further to go, as Ken already pointed out. Our hardworking board and all of YANA's extended network reminds me of the quote from Howard's End, "Only connect." Of course, it isn't only connect, but rather that connecting is everything. This amazing community of Yaleys from all generations, sharing, giving, and working hard, each doing our piece, is a demonstration of how much we can accomplish if we all do even a little. The people that we are honoring today and from whom we are going to hear tomorrow have done way more than a little, and for that we are eternally grateful.
Okay, so before we get to the honorees, we have a real treat for you. You know, Yale has a tradition of music, especially a cappella music. Everyone's heard of the Whip and Poofs, I'm sure. But we have a group that I think is so special. They just celebrated their 35th anniversary. Shades of Yale, their music celebrates the African diaspora. And they're going to do 2 numbers tonight, one now and one towards the end of the program. How about a big hand for Shades of Yale?
Hello, everyone. My name is Maxwell Brown. I am the musical director of Shades of Yale. Thank you. We were founded in 1988, and we sing music of the Black tradition in African diaspora. We have 2 songs for you tonight, but we're going to sing our first one, which is Rain by SWV.
Fall down, Lord, please. Let it fall down, Lord, please. Fall down, Lord, please. Let it fall down, Lord, please. Sometimes it's soft as a misty rain that gently touches our soul. It cools the fire that burns in us, and we simply lose control. So just rain down, Lord, please. Let your love just fall like raindrops of rain. Lord, please, just rain down, Lord, please. Let your love just shower us, just rain. Lord, please. Rain, rain on me, rain, rain on me, rain, rain on me, rain, rain on me, rain, Lord, rain on me, we need it, rain on me, rain, Lord, rain on me, we need it, rain on me, rain down, Lord, rain on me, we need it, rain on me, rain down, Lord, rain on me, we need it, rain on me, rain down, Lord, rain on me, we need it, rain on me, Lord, please. Fall down, Lord, please.
Beautiful job, Shades. They're going to come back for one more number a little bit later on. Okay, so our first honoree. Everyone, our first honoree. And Merle just whispered in my ear, I do have to plug the silent auction. We've got some terrific things that people can bid on, including a signed poster here of Bruce Springsteen. But if you take a look at your table, there's your QR code, you can sign up and start the bidding. Okay, so to introduce David Blight, I'm going to first introduce the presenter, Annie Roberts. Annie is the Yale class of 21. When I asked David, and I told him that tonight's theme is generation to generation, I said, David, is there a student, is there someone from the next generation that would be fitting to introduce you? And he immediately said, there's a young woman named Annie Roberts. anyway, we put the connection that Annie is actually the daughter of Richard Roberts, who's another introducer, but it kind of just perfectly blends into the generation to generation theme. Annie is currently a curator at the Museum of Modern Art. She received a master's. After her Yale bachelor's, she received a master's at Cambridge in the history of art. And she was a standout student in David's class, The Life and Writings of Frederick Douglass. So how about a big hand for Annie Roberts?
Hi, Shades is a bit of a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. So I'm Annie Roberts, and I'm extremely excited to introduce Dr. David Blight, the Sterling Professor of History and African American Studies at Yale. So when I arrived at Yale in 2017 as a freshman, my dad gave me a very long list of to-dos. It included all sorts of things. Become a Saybrook College aide so that you can work commencement. Very good advice. Take calculus. Bad advice. And at the top of that list was to take a course with someone named Professor Blight. Naturally, I immediately consulted Google and wanted to share a little bit of what I found. Professor Blight arrived at Yale in 2003 after 13 years at Amherst College, and soon after took the helm of the Gilder Lehrman Center for the Study of Slavery, Resistance, and Abolition, the first of its kind globally. As director, he leads and facilitates a number of programs, including conferences, research groups, lectures, and outreach programs. Their mission to support K-12 education, as well as the education of the public, is particularly relevant and urgent today, and I encourage all of you to take a look at their work after you leave here. In 2012, he was elected to the Academy of Arts and Letters, and over the course of his career has authored and edited numerous books, including Frederick Douglass's second autobiography, My Bondage, My Freedom, A Slave No More, Two Men Who Escaped to Freedom, including their narratives of emancipation, and Race and Reunion, The Civil War in American Memory, which won 7 prizes. He is, as many of you know, one of the nation's leading scholars of the Civil War, American history, or American slavery, and race, as well as their legacies in American culture. Needless to say, my Google search left me a little bit intimidated. And yet, I really had no reason to be, for Professor Blight is a teacher in the truest sense of the word. Many of my closest friends would take courses with Professor Blight my freshman and sophomore year and could not have raved more. After a famous Blight lecture or seminar, they had that excited, giddy energy that so many of us who went to Yale know so well, leaving the semester excited by the material they had encountered and the knowledge they had gained. I saw this especially in my younger brother, Taylor, who arrived at Yale a year after me. Taylor was a history buff before, but after taking a course with Professor Blight, I would find him in the Saybrook dining hall reading books that were very large and not assigned in class, which, for a freshman was a little concerning, but cool. One of these books was Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom, which I'm sure many of you know was published in 2018 to widespread acclaim and was awarded 8 prizes, including the Pulitzer Prize for History. My senior year of college, in the midst of the pandemic and the height of Zoom school, I took the Life and Writings of Frederick Douglass with my brother, the class for which we read Prophet of Freedom, and Professor Blight more than lived up to the hype. At a time of immense confusion and turmoil, both on campus and in the world, this seminar reminded me why I decided to double major in African American Studies and art history. It reconfirmed the importance of studying and engaging with the humanities and having a firm grasp on history when navigating modern day issues. Most importantly, Professor Blight had an incredible ability to tailor his courses for each moment and for each student. For example, knowing my interest in art history, he gave me the space and encouragement to write papers on the representation of Douglass, both in the art of his lifetime and by contemporary artists. I remember being so nervous to ask Professor Blight about the idea for my final paper, and his response, I actually looked it up in my email, was, "Why not try?" And then, as a further vote of confidence, he put me in direct contact with collectors and scholars of Douglas. In my current role as a curatorial assistant in the Department of Photography at MoMA, it was Professor Blight's syllabus that I turned to when I was asked to develop research on Frederick Douglass, and it was Blight's vote of confidence that I remembered when I pitched potential acquisitions by the museum related to Douglass's life. More broadly, Professor Blight, through his incredible work as a scholar, academic, public historian, and leadership with the Gilder Lehrman Center, provided me with an amazing model for what a career that marries rigorous scholarship, education of the public, and nonprofit work could look like, giving me the confidence to pursue my passion at a time when such a career seemed like a very difficult and scary prospect. Furthermore, his continued dedication to the study of race in America with projects such as his forthcoming book, Yale and Slavery, A History, which I cannot wait for, demonstrates the importance of African American studies and the central role the study of race must play and continue to play in schools, on campuses, in research centers, and public institutions like the one I work for today. And for this, I am so, so grateful. So please join me in welcoming and applauding Professor David Blight.
Is there a photo? I think Yale students know what to do with containers like this. I'll just show you guys. Exactly like that. Shades would know.
We can get it.
Annie, thank you for that. That's hard to take. I'm sure you didn't look down at our table, Annie, at the way your parents were beaming, and your mother was recording it all, and your dad was squirming. What a thrill for me, thrill for them. A lot of you are standing on your feet, so I'm going to try to keep this short, although Ken mistakenly said I could have 15 minutes. Now, that's probably a mistake, Ken. No, he assigned me 15 minutes. Shades, thank you. That was fabulous. None of you are old enough to remember, but we used to hold the Frederick Douglass Book Prize dinner here at the Yale Club back when Dick Gilder was so flush. We put on a big dinner here, and several times we had shades. Ended with like 3 numbers. In fact, sometimes a 4th and a 5th encore. I'm not kidding. You weren't doing an encore earlier, but people were asking for it. So at the end, huh? I want to quickly introduce people at my table. Cynthia Copeland is here as my guest. Cynthia is a public historian here in New York. She runs our Gilder Lehrman Public History Institute in the summer, chairs it, organizes it, runs it. She teaches at NYU. She teaches elsewhere here in the city. She's my favorite public historian. If you've walked through Central Park, among the other things Cynthia has done, if you've ever walked by all those signs about Seneca Village, Cynthia did that. And she's here representing our center. Just happens to live in New York as well. And my partner, Marcia Andrews, is also at our table. Thank you, Marcia, for coming. Look, yeah, I've never taken well to this kind of an honor. I want to mention Peter Salovey. 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, Peter called me one day and asked me to take on managing and writing the history of Yale and slavery. And apologies to the few of you who might have heard me say this before. I spent about the first 30 seconds on the phone praying that this had not happened. That's a very large story, in case you hadn't thought about it. And I gulped and I said, yeah, sure. Anyway, that's how it started. To his credit, Peter owns this project. He asked for it. He supported it. The president's office supported all of our research assistants. And to a small degree, our little management team at the Gilder Lehrman Center. But no one on the faculty took a dime to do this. And since this is a nonprofit organization, I wanted to make sure I said that. Even profits off the royalties on the book are going to various kinds of causes. Now, that project, we did it in 3 years, which I still can't quite believe we did. We had a small but very talented team of researchers, started out with undergraduates and graduate students and law students. And as students are students, some worked for 1 week and left, some worked for a month, and students do tend to leave college, you know, you know that. Some worked with us for a few months. We got it boiled down eventually to about 3 really professional research assistants, not that the students weren't professional. I had a small team of Yale librarians, and particularly one person from the president's office, Hope McGrath, who was loaned to us by Peter. Peter's office paid her salary. She has a PhD in history, and she was at that point writing speeches for Peter. So she was thrilled to come do, well, she was happy to also come do historical research. And so we've written a book called Yale and Slavery, A History. Simple title. I had an idea early on that what we were going to do with this project is not what most universities have done. And that's not to denigrate what they've done, because now many, actually dozens of universities have studied their past with slavery, famously in some cases. But most of them have written reports. And reports are good. I have nothing against reports. But I didn't want to write a report. I didn't want to write something with bullet points and graphs. I wanted to write a real narrative history, and that's what we did. It's pushing 400 pages. It's a narrative. It's a story. It's about Yale's origins. It's about Yale's growth. It's about an 18th century Yale, a 19th century Yale, and a 20th century Yale, at least part of that 20th century. The book ends in 1915 with the unveiling of the War Memorial in Wolsey Hall that you have all walked by possibly hundreds or thousands of times in your Yale lives, but most people, and certainly most Yaleys, do not know what that monument actually means, how it was created, what it was meant to commemorate, and that it actually is the most prominent and significant Confederate lost cause memorial on northern soil. It's a book that is about Yale very much. Its origins, its development, its presidents, its faculty, its rectors, its donors, its famous personalities over the years. But it's also a book very much about the New Haven community. The New Haven black community in particular, as it grew over time for generations. It was an attempt to also write a history of Yale and the problem of slavery in the broader world, broader nation and broader world. It is not an attempt, and I've said this now to various alumni groups, 2 sessions of the Board of Trustees, 2 sessions of all the VPs and the deans. Peter keeps trotting us out to present to every group he can think of. It is not an effort to try to find every little evil corner of Yale's history and, there was a slaveholder, and there was a slaveholder, and there was a slaveholder. That's too easy. There were a lot of them. However, it is a story about the deep involvement, growth within, response to this very American problem of the growth of slavery in North America. And it also is a story of all kinds of triumphs, all kinds of changes. In fact, I now can walk around the campus and I actually know who some of these names are on all the buildings. I didn't want to grow up to write a history of Yale. I had another book I was writing, but Peter called. And by the way, when he announced that he was leaving us in June, a month or so ago, I suddenly realized, well, those deadlines were so stiff that they gave us. God, we kept asking, couldn't we just have one more, term? How about a year? No, we've got to have this in the summer of 23. All right. Then he announced he's leaving, and I thought, I get it. The book comes out in February. The website will be up in about a month. We've been doing videos for the websites. There's going to be a new app, a whole new tour of campus. The Yale Arts and Memorialization Committee, I might not have that name right, is working as we speak on all kinds of planning that will be about new kinds of memorialization at Yale about this story, and some of it quite creative. There are also going to be a number of responses, as the Yale President's Office, his team calls it, and I think that's appropriate. Responses that are especially going to be about Yale's generosity to the New Haven community. One project I think is going to happen, and I hope it's okay that I say it. Peter's not here, is he? We're going to have a major new project reaching out to the New Haven public schools. It's going to be newly possible by next year for Yale students to get certified as teachers. They will do a master's degree. They'll do a one-year master's degree and get certified. They have to agree to teach at least 3 years in the New Haven public schools. That's just one of the many things that the President's team and various committees are working on. I just want to say a couple more things, not so much about that project, but that my own thrill of being able to teach at Yale. I didn't go to Yale. I went to public universities in the Midwest. Yeah. I'm a Big Ten guy. I can't help it. The Big Ten's everywhere now. Is Yale in the Big Ten yet? Everyone else is. God. You can't even know the players anymore. But I get up every day, even the days when I'm hopelessly busy and I got too many jobs and I wish I wasn't writing Yale and slavery history. And I pinch myself. I'm not kidding. I get to teach at this place. I get to teach students like Yale undergraduates. Don't kid yourselves. I can tell you that in the history department, yeah, we love our graduate students, and yeah, we think they're our legacy, which isn't really true. But the most fun teaching at Yale is undergraduate seminars. It just is. Because it doesn't get any better than having 15 or whatever eager juniors or sophomores who just chose your topic. And you get to just talk with them for a whole semester. Then you got to read their papers. Ken, I didn't put that together that YANA actually could stand for You Are Not Alone. I mean, I didn't. But James Baldwin's favorite definition of what it meant to have a sense of history. He's being interviewed by none other than Studs Terkel. 40 years ago or whenever some of you remember Studs Terkel? The inimitable Studs in Chicago with that voice. And Studs was interviewing him. And Baldwin was being Baldwin. He was just shooting from the hip. He was complaining. It was 1962. Think of the year. And Baldwin is saying, Americans have no sense of history. They wouldn't know any history if it hit him between the eyes, and he's just firing from the hip. And Terkel at one point just cautions him and says, but Mr. Baldwin, whoa, what do you mean by a sense of history? And Baldwin stops there's a video of this interview. He stops. Unlike Baldwin, he actually paused and thought for a moment. And he said, oh, well, it means when you're a struggling person and history's not on your side, you realize that what's happening to you also happened to Dostoevsky. And you realize that it means you're not alone. And I've always found that an especially useful definition in working with young people, students, high school students even. What does it mean to have a sense of history? And yeah, you're supposed to know this and know that and line up the facts. No, it isn't. It's knowing that whatever may happen to you, and it may be horrible, it's already happened somewhere else to somebody else. You're not alone. I can't think of a better way, a better reason for teaching history. Last point. I've been speaking a lot of different places recently, and I find audiences now, and this won't surprise any of you, and I'm sure you encounter the same thing. I was at 2 different forums last weekend, one in Maryland and one at Chautauqua in Western New York. And Chautauqua put on a big forum on democracy. If you haven't noticed, everybody's doing a forum on democracy, for good reason. And I gave a talk, not on Frederick Douglass, but on democracy. I just took them through a whole variety of stops democracy has made through history. And I was trying to be a historian for them. And apparently I came off pretty bleak. And I probably meant to. And after we had these breakout sessions, and I'm at a table with about 8 or 10 of these are the audiences I love, almost as much as this audience. But these are people who read books, but they're not academics. I'd rather speak to real people who read books than a room full of academics any day. But the people at my table kept asking, well, a couple of them kept asking, Professor, but where's the hope? Where's the hope? Whew. And you know, that's not easy. And I fumbled around saying, well, the hope comes in knowing you're doing good work, and the hope comes in just doing what you do well, and the hope comes in your reading. And frankly, I didn't give them a good answer. But actually, having attended this thing tonight with this many people doing nonprofit work, with this kind of energy, I think I have a new story to tell them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Blight. So our next honoree is Sherry Wang, and to introduce her, we have Richard Roberts. Richard is from the class of '86, class secretary, longtime class secretary. Richard's one of the people that his resume, his bio is so long, I'm just going to call a couple highlights. First, he's a principal at Redstone Equity Partners, which does incredible affordable housing development for low and moderate income families. The other one is that he is the original head of the Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group that Sherry runs now. But I think if we were to ask Richard, I'm going to guess this, I'm going to say he's most proud of the fact that he has been the board chair of Global Kids, a nonprofit, and he was just named by Crain's New York as one of the top nonprofit board chairs in New York City. Okay? So, and of course, in the theme of generation to generation again, he's Annie's dad. So how about a big hand for Richard Roberts?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for that. And I would just another round of applause for Ken and Rachel and Merle for this great event. I want to congratulate all of the honorees. Mentioned Rachel. Rich and I go back to a strategic planning session that we did for Global Kids about 12 years ago, 13 years ago in Ken Miller's apartment when we didn't have spaces to do events. We just did them in people's homes, and David, Professor Blight is a friend, and we're really committed to his work at Gilder Lehrman. And my daughter Annie introducing him. Janice and I, my wife's here. We have, it's a term in Yiddish. We have extreme nachas for that. That was quite something. But my task is a bit different. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Sherry Wang. Sherry, come on up. Sherry is a Yale class of 2007. She's co-head of the Goldman Sachs Urban Investment Group within the Asset Management Division at Goldman. And she's co-chair of the UIG Investment Committee and a member of the 1 Million Black Women Steering Committee, and a member of the Sustainable Finance Group Steering Committee as well. Established in 2000, UIG is an investing and lending business that has committed more than $17 billion to community and economic development investments in the United States. She leads a team of 45 people, investing $3 billion a year annually, primarily alongside nonprofits and government agencies. Recent investments include the National Urban League headquarters, the New York City Small Business Opportunity Fund, and the New York City COVID-19 Hospital Loan Fund. When I asked Sherry about the work and projects that have most impacted her, and she cited the work that she and UIG have done with partners Neighborhood Restore and NG Community Capital to support struggling single-family homeowners to modify loans to a level that they can afford. And I want to personally applaud her for her work on the Guarantee Fund that helps minority-owned development firms demonstrate the financial wherewithal to participate in affordable housing projects. She serves on the New York Advisory Board of the Enterprise Community Partners and on the Board of Directors of the Center for an Even Future, and is a Salzburg Global Fellow. She lived in Saybrook College at Yale and earned a BA in Mathematics and Economics. She's a native of Long Island and a mom of two. I've known Sherry for quite some time as our firms have partnered extensively over the past several years. I've always been impressed with the level of intellectual curiosity and humility that she brings to her work. On the initial project call, she poses a lot of questions, and she continues to ask them throughout the process, and I think it helps everyone get to a good result. Her humility is refreshing, not only given where she works, but in a field where we work with a lot of people who tend to think they have all the answers. This humble quality, which belies a wickedly smart and capable person, makes her extremely well liked in our industry. She is the person most likely to elicit a smile upon the mention of her name. I think it's a testament to Sherry that so many current and past UIGers are here to support her. When Sherry and I had lunch last week, she said to me, when I left college, I really wanted to change the world. And through my work at UIG, I really believe that in my own small way, I've had an opportunity to do that. That statement coming from this incredibly humble, well-liked, and accomplished person struck just the right tone. I think it's because of that impact that has not been small and instead has been tremendously important that we recognize her tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Sherry Wang.
Richard, thank you so much for those incredibly kind words. I remember meeting Richard for the first time a little over 10 years ago, and I was incredibly intimidated. Here was this guy, the commissioner of HDC, the first founder of the Urban Investment Group at Goldman Sachs, Yale undergrad, Yale Law School graduate, which already just makes him kind of a legend to all the Yale Law grads here. And what I found in Richard was actually the same kind of humility and sense of humor. Richard, despite being a very nice person, actually has kind of a mean sense of humor, which I also do, which I really appreciated. And that kind of, I think, instant comfort, mutual understanding, that's something that I felt with so many other Yaleys that I've met in the nonprofit industry and in my work in urban development, economic development. And I think Peter Salovey said, at graduation, we were told and informed that we have this responsibility to change the world. And I think many of us take that very seriously and continue to think about that, whether it's in a small, medium, or large way every day. Since I'm being honored tonight for the work that I lead at the Urban Investment Group, I just want to share a little bit about my path to UIG. I think I was actually drawn to economic development from a very young age, even though I didn't know it back then. When I was 5 years old, my family immigrated to the United States from China. Like so many other immigrants, my parents, didn't have any other family in the country. They had very little savings. I remember in kindergarten, I didn't speak a single word of English because we moved here in July when I was 5.5, and I got on the bus in September. And so when I played family with the other kids, I always had to play the baby because I couldn't communicate with anyone. And I think that was scarring. But, despite all the things that we didn't have, what we did have, and this is what I learned at Yale, was that I was fortunate enough to be part of a really great community with very strong publicly funded institutions like SUNY Stony Brook, where my parents went to grad school, or the affordable housing that we lived in, that we shared with another Chinese American family, or the free ESL classes that I took, where eventually I learned English and I could get out of that baby purgatory once and for all. Fast forward, my time at Yale helped me really put my own lived experience into a broader context. I think I didn't understand the role that capital and public policy, and quite frankly, structural racism play to create the very unique opportunities that my family was given that so many others weren't. And so my time at Yale lit a fire for me to pursue a career in economic development. And I have to say that it's been incredibly, incredibly rewarding. Richard listed some of the things that we've done in UIG. We've worked with hundreds of nonprofit organizations to create affordable housing, to fund small businesses to help them grow. And I think most importantly, I'm very proud of the work that we've done to help families achieve socioeconomic mobility like mine did, through education, through better healthcare, and through access to fair financial services, things that I think many of us could take for granted. I'm so grateful that there's so many UIG alums who are here tonight, whether they're still Yaleys or not. Thank you for coming. And thank you again to YANA for this recognition. Congratulations to the other honorees. It's such an honor to be up here with you guys. And finally, I just want to thank my husband, Zach Ozer, who's over there, who is the best friend and best partner I could ever ask for. Thank you.
Should we leave this here, or should we leave this here? We should leave this here, then, okay, great, okay, good. We got a case for it, okay.
Okay, our next honoree is Richard Beery. And to introduce him, we have Peter Borish. Peter is he's an investment legend. Peter's dad actually was Yale class of 49, Philip Borish, World War II vet, Korean War vet. And Peter comes just from a long line of service. He himself has been the head or the board member of many nonprofits. But I think his place in the Nonprofit Hall of Fame comes when he and his investment partner, Paul Tudor Jones, and also a gentleman named Glenn Dubin, founded Robin Hood, I believe in 1988. You're going to hear all about Robin Hood, but how about a big hand for Peter Borish?
Wow, thank you. Yeah, it's always a little weird, as a hedge fund guy, following someone from Goldman Sachs who has been so tremendous to Robinhood in so many ways, in a long history of their CEOs. Lloyd Blankfein today, David Solomon are on the board of Robinhood, and we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are without them, and they've been so helpful just working with us on sort of next generation philanthropy. So I want to thank them and everybody from Goldman who's here and help support Robinhood. Anyway, my name is Peter Borish, and I have the distinct honor of introducing Richard Beery, Jr., who's the class of 1997 Yale Law School. And besides being delighted to be here, Ken just said my dad was Yale 49. And I practically grew up at this club thinking that all meals were free, since all you had to do was sign a chit. And now I'm an economist, and as an economist, I see things that work in reality, and then I question whether they'll work in theory. And so, like my reality, that the food at the Yale Club is free, even tonight. So, as a co-founder and longtime board member of Robin Hood, New York's largest anti-poverty philanthropy, we connect and fuel and fund hundreds of New York City-based organizations that scale using evidence-based solutions to fight and hopefully attempt to eliminate poverty for lower income, less fortunate New Yorkers. As most of you know, Rich is our CEO. He's been with us since 2021. And I first met Rich during the search process. After reading his bio and resume, I said to myself, holy shit, thank God I'm on the board, because there's no way I can compare to his background. That's one of the advantages of aging, you know. You're there early on before all the innovation, and then you can take credit for it. So that's another thing that I'm fantastic at as a hedge fund guy. I take credit for success and blame others for failure. So I knew instantly he was the right person to lead Robin Hood. And so just a little bit about Rich's background. He's led 4 organizations that Robin Hood funds, including the Brennan Center, KIP, Children's Aid, and Achievement First. He has also been a social entrepreneur, which is great because that's sort of the Robin Hood spirit, helped to fund 2 other organizations. Groundwork, an organization Robin Hood supported to facilitate the educational aspirations of public housing residents in Brooklyn, and later a national not-for-profit, iMentor, which totally relates to the first thing about what you were talking about with regard to teachers and coming and getting a master and making a commitment, because that's a program to help students navigate to and through college. All these organizations have amazing track records of producing results and extending social impact. And the fact that so many were already connected to Robin Hood confirmed my belief that Rich was the right person to lead Robin Hood. Rich's tenure as CEO came on the heels of a global pandemic that really devastated the lowest income households, not only in New York, but everywhere else. And I'm just gonna throw in a line for myself, which is, you know, as a Democrat that believes in markets, I like to say that trickle-down economics is when things go bad, those at the bottom get screwed first. And we at Robin Hood try to help that through our history, and when there's events, whether it's 9/11 or Sandy or the pandemic, that's where we come together and we thrive for New York City. Rich has been deputy mayor of strategic initiatives for New York City, where he led and was a key architect for the city's pre-K for all initiative, enabling 50,000 additional 4-year-olds to get an early start on their education through a 3 full-day program. He also launched Schools Out New York City, offering free after-school programs to all New York City middle school students, and stood up 200 community new school partnerships and led the city's efforts to recruit 1,000 men of color to become public school teachers. So as a board member and now a friend, I'm so proud of Rich, not only for all he has accomplished in his 2 short years at Robin Hood, but for his so many contributions to New Yorkers. It is my pleasure to present the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Allegiance Generation to Generation Award to Richard. Congratulations.
You can't tell from the picture, it doesn't matter.
Oh, there you are, you're on top. Okay.
Take a picture.
They take a picture.
I don't know. All right, we'll take care
Okay.
of
And then I'm putting this down
that.
here.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. So bad news and good news. The bad news is I am not going to be as good a public speaker as anyone who you've heard so far. But the good news is I will be brief because I hate public speaking, and so I will not stand up here very long. A few things. First, I just want to thank, I have a bunch of friends and colleagues who are here, a bunch of my, I'm not going to name all the names, but a bunch of law school classmates who came out and their partners. Thank you for coming out, for your support. I appreciate it. Honest City Hall colleagues are here, even though they're actually here supporting Sherry, but I'm going to pretend like you all are here for me also. But I appreciate you all. It's good to see you all. And I'm really just truly happy to be here. I'm happy to be here for a few reasons. First of all, because we're all judged in some level by the company we keep. David, Sherry, and Rachel is quite a high class of company. And so, first of all, congratulations to all of you, and it's a real honor to share the podium and share these, what are really the nicest prize I've seen in a long time, the nicest award with you. So I'm very appreciative of that. I'm also, I have to say, I'm happy to be here because I didn't know that YANA existed until I heard from Peter that Ken wanted to introduce me, wanted to honor me tonight. And I have to say, I feel like I'm among my tribe here, even though I did not know this place existed. And so I'm happy to be here in part because I get to learn about this wonderful organization and to think about how I can join myself to this network of people who are trying to do good in the world. So happy to be here for that reason. So maybe I'll just say two things. One is, it would be hard for me to overstate the role that Yale played in my life and career. I grew up in New York. I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn. Brooklyn in the house. Always. Always. I don't live there anymore. It's a little embarrassing, but it's in my heart always. So I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn. People know East New York. It's a neighborhood on the eastern border of Queens. It's a low-income community. And it was a challenging place to grow up. I was very lucky. I went to really excellent public schools. I went to Stuyvesant High School. Are they looking to Stuyvesant? We got Stuy here too? All right. Got Brooklyn, we got Stuy, we got Yale. I'm just going to keep milking the applause tracks. Well, I'll lose it now. I went to college at Harvard. But thank you, I appreciate it. When I was in high school at Stuyvesant, it was really my first time going to school with kids who weren't Black or Latino kids from Eastern Brooklyn. Stuyvesant is an exam school, people know it. It was a very jarring experience for me. It was one that I had a hard time adjusting to. For a bunch of reasons, but one of the elements of going to school there is I sort of had this daily reminder of the inequities that exist in our country. Because I grew up in one city, a city where opportunity was hard to come by. But then I would have this hour-long subway ride and get to this place where everyone was going to be able to do whatever they wanted to do, and they knew they had the resources to do it. I went to a neighborhood that probably had a couple kids go to Harvard. I went to a high school where we had 36 kids in my high school go to Harvard, 6 kids in my homeroom. And it was a very jarring experience, and I went to Harvard and really carried a lot of anger and anxiety with me from that experience. But I was really lucky that in Harvard I found a pathway to joy through service. I found through a friend an after-school program in a housing project in Roxbury. I started volunteering there initially once a week, then it was twice a week. By the end of my freshman year, I was there 4 days a week. I was there more than I was probably on campus. And I fell in love with this community. I fell in love with those kids and those families. And I remember after my first year summer, I come back to New York to work at a daycare center and then came back to college, being so excited. I was more excited about anything than going back to Mission Hill houses. And I remember going back, like it was yesterday, going back and seeing the kids, like, oh, what do you guys do this summer? What do you do this summer? And they didn't do shit all summer. They sat around, they watched TV. They wasted 3 months of learning and experiences And it was just a reminder that the same way that there were two different communities that I lived in New York, there were two different Bostons, and there are two different New Havens, and two different Oaklands, and two different everywhere. Because these kids, by not having anything to do during the summer, had lost the opportunity to learn, to thrive, that my kids take for granted, that your kids can take for granted. And so the luckiest thing that ever happened in my life is that because I didn't know any better, me and some friends started a summer camp for those kids. And it was, and there are a few people in the room who have had similar experiences. But that experience really was so critically important to me because it helped me understand early on in life that when you see something that is not fair, and these kids having just watched TV all summer was not fair. When you see something that is not fair, you can do something about it. You can do something about it even when you're a 17-year-old college student. You could do something about it. And that became very important for me in my career because I knew I wanted to do that for a living, but I had no idea where one goes to start a summer program, graduate school. I didn't really know what the pathway for that was. But I was very lucky. I have a friend who's a mutual friend to some folks in this room. I see you, Dreama, and Astrid and Matt. So we have a friend named Henry who I had done this program with in college who had gone to Yale Law School. And when he had gone to Yale Law School, he and my friend Matt over here and a few other friends started a summer program and what became one of the largest youth development agencies in Connecticut called LEAP. And so I went to law school with no intention or interest in being a lawyer. But I really went to law school because I didn't really know how to do what I wanted to do, but I at least knew some people who were doing it, and they went to Yale, so I figured I would go there too. And not probably the best reason to take on $250,000 in debt, but it worked out. I found a tribe in law school. I found a pathway to profession. I found a wife who is still, for some reason, married to me. And so Yale really set the course of my career because after Yale, I was able to figure out how to do what I wanted to do, starting nonprofits in the greatest city in the world. It's been quite a ride, and I've loved every minute of it. I think one thing I share in common with everybody who's been at the podium tonight is I love my job, and I pinch myself every day because my whole job is getting people with means to give us resources so that we can give it to people who are doing good work. And I love that work. I get to work with and support the most amazing advocates and entrepreneurs and educators and leaders in this city. Thank God for Yale, because I don't really know how I would have figured it out if I hadn't gone here. So I guess the last thing I want to say, because it's hard to, I feel like it's hard to be anywhere right now and not to be, I feel like I've been on the verge of tears for 2 weeks, because the world is so horrible right now. The suffering, the anti-Semitism that we are seeing in our city and our world, the Islamophobia we're seeing in our city and our world, it is heartbreaking. But it's another reason why I'm happy to be here, because it is so important in times of trauma to be with people and to remember that most people are really trying to come together and do great things. And it's easy to forget that when you think what's going on in the world, but it's important to remember. And one quote who I stole from somebody, I can't remember who I stole it from, but I think it's very meaningful. It's, when you're faced with all the injustice in the world, it's very easy to just not want to get out of bed, to assume that nothing can change. But there is a great saying, and it'll come to me who said it in a minute, but I use it all the time, it's that hope is a discipline. And what that really means for me is that, for one thing, hope is the fuel that gets us up and out of bed and doing the difficult work when it feels like the difficult work is impossible. What gets us coming to things like this and supporting each other and doing the work is that hope that fuels us to do what feels impossible. And the idea that it's a discipline means that you can't just assume that hope is there. You have to cultivate that hope. You have to celebrate successes and celebrate victories. And I remember, and so appropriate to say this in front of David Blight, when I get depressed about the world, I try to remember what this world looked like. When I get depressed about this country, think about the injustices that Frederick Douglass faced, that Fannie Lou Hamer faced, that Martin Luther King faced, that Bayard Rustin faced. When we think about their obstacles, how dare we be overcome? How dare we lose hope? How dare we lose faith? Because if they could build the world that we've inherited now, surely we can build a better world for our children. That's why I do this. I have two beautiful boys who were supposed to come tonight, but they didn't want to, so I told them they didn't have to. I could make up a whole thing, but they really just didn't want to. But I know I do this work because I love them. And I don't want them to have to live in two New Yorks. I want them to live in a different place. I want all of our children to live in a different place. So that was longer than I intended. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, before we get to our last honoree, Rachel Lippman, we're going to take another musical break and enjoy the sounds of Shades of Yale.
Hello again, hello again. So we're moving on. We're going to be singing what we recall as our anthem of our group. This is a medley of Amen and We Shall Overcome, and it's a traditional song that we do in the group. We'd love to invite any alumni in the audience to come and join us. That's our tradition here in Shades. Yeah, come join us, come join us. So we're going to sing this song for you all.
Shades of Yale. By the way, these students took the train down from New Haven. They're going back tonight. They're here just for us. So how about another hand? Okay. By the way, Merrill just reminded me, if you want to learn more about YANA, if you'd like to find out how to get involved, if you'd like to make a donation, the easiest way to do it is just go to our website, easy to remember, yale.community, okay? And that'll answer a lot of questions. Feel free to reach out at any time. Now for our last honoree, very special person in many of our lives, Rachel Littman, and to introduce her is another very special person, Wei Li Cheng. Wei Li's Yale class of 77. She was the year after me at Pearson College, so I've known Wei Li a long time. She's the current executive director of the YAA, the Yale Alumni Association, and Wei Li herself is stepping down early 2024. She's had a remarkable career leading the YAA, a lot of changes, a lot of transformation under her leadership. One of the very early things she did, which always impressed me, is she issued a global survey of Yale alums to actually get the data on what we were thinking, what we needed, where the strengths were, where the weaknesses were. And she immediately implemented a lot of those policies and her findings. I could go on and on. She is a Yale medal winner. She has just, again, done so much for the university. But how about a big hand for Wei Li Cheng?
Thank you, Ken. And congratulations to all of you at YANA for putting on such a special evening. Isn't it great? I want to extend my sincere congratulations to David, to Richard, and to Sherry for their leadership in earning these wonderful awards. Doing good always and making all of us proud, so thank you. So as executive director of the Yale Alumni Association, I feel most of the times that I have the best job in the world. Our mission at the Yale Alumni Association is to enhance and renew the lifelong Yale experience for all alumni, wherever they are and whoever they may be. So the focus is on people. And it's at events like this that I'm thrilled to be a part of, simply because it's a lot of alumni doing good work. At the YAA, we strive to enhance, as I mentioned, the lifelong Yale experience, and also to spark and support new ideas, friendships, professional fulfillment, and acts of service around the globe among our Yale community of more than 180,000 alumni. Building community, that's what the Yale Alumni Association is about, and that is what YANA is about. YANA is exemplary among our shared interest groups. And again, I want to congratulate Ken, Merle, and of course, Rachel. Since 2019, in the past 5 years, actually that's not 5 years, that's 4 years. I always tell people I was a philosophy major, not a math major. Well, since 2019, there's one alum in particular whose work is particularly notable. Rachel Littman has served since then as YANA's executive director, and she's set a new standard of excellence for volunteer engagement. Here are a few of YANA's achievements that would not have been possible without Rachel's visionary and energetic leadership. So the first is establishing a network of not 1, not 2, not 3, but 9 active regional chapters ranging from the Pacific Northwest to Western Europe. 2, doubling of YANA's membership to over 8,000 members. 8,000 members globally. 3, a tripling of YANA's annual operating budget. 4, raising over $150,000 to support the annual YANA Dwight Hall Fellowship, which has helped launch nonprofit careers of over 30 Yale students. That's amazing. For all of these achievements, YANA has, for 5 consecutive years, been recognized with the YAA's Excellence Award. And of course, just recently, I've been very happy to welcome Rachel on the YAA's Board of Governors. We're delighted to have you, Rachel. So Rachel, thank you for your dedicated and selfless service to Yale and to your fellow alumni. YANA's motto, as Ken mentioned, is working together, giving back, and changing lives. And you exemplify these 3 ideals. Through your collaborative spirit and commitment to Tikkun Olam, repairing our world, you have inspired, uplifted, and changed the lives of so many over the past 4 or 5 years. From generation to generation, and for that we are so grateful. So it is my honor to present you with this richly deserved and beautiful award.
And I think I'm joining your generation now because I do need my reading glasses these days. So thank you, Whaley, for the kind introduction and also for your decades of service to the Yale alumni community, obviously most recently in your role as Executive Director of the YAA. You've really made a lasting impression. You've inspired and energized all of us to do more and do it better for our Yale community and beyond. And we wish you much luck and joy in your retirement. And maybe this will be your final retirement, not just an interim one. We'll call you back again. So thank you to Whaley. I also want to say it's amazing. Congratulations to all the other honorees I'm up here with. This is a couple of tough acts to follow for everyone, but I want to thank in particular Ken and Adomi, the rest of the YANA board. If you're a former or a current board member, if you just raise your hand. Thank you, everyone, YANA. You guys have been amazing. Tremendous colleagues and supporters, and I would highly recommend if you love YANA, you want to get more involved, please consider joining our board. Obviously, the people behind the scenes, Leanna Epstein is in the back. Thank you. Merle Kalis, Joellen Gray, Grace Shea, and everyone else on the planning and development committees who really worked tirelessly to make tonight and tomorrow, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at the conference, professional, entertaining, and meaningful. So thank you, everybody, for all of your hard work. I want to also thank my table here and my family, my husband, Doug. I even have my rabbi, Brad Hirschfield, is here. My son, Adam, came up from Princeton. My mother, Trish, who's been a supporter. My daughter, Amanda, who couldn't make it, and my brother and his family who weren't able to join us. I just want to say thank you to everyone from the bottom of my heart for all your support and encouragement to allow me to do this work full time. So thank you. I really want to thank the whole YANA community, including all of you who are here tonight. You have really shown up, and not just tonight, but throughout these years and in so many ways, with your time, your energy, your ideas, and as Whaley can testify, you all have a lot of ideas, and obviously your financial support. We're grateful for that. And I would say in my role as executive director, I've really had the privilege and the honor of learning why you show up the way that you do. And it really varies from person to person in the work that you do and why you come to YANA. And that could be from wanting to support nonprofits. It could be because you want to engage and support the next generation of social impact leaders, or because maybe you need a community of like-minded, mission-driven people, unbounded by geography or cause, class year or identity, and maybe even whether or not they're Yaleys, although that may be even what drew you to YANA in the first place. So YANA has been your home, and we hope it will continue to be so for many years and obviously for future generations. I do look forward to returning to YANA's board and building out the many individual and organizational relationships that we've already established. And I'm so happy that there are people here who are coming to YANA for the first time. Welcome. We have lots of a great future and collaboration to do. So if you have expert skills to give back to nonprofits, or if your organization needs help, or if even you individually need some career advice or help as you're switching into or within the social impact space, I hope you'll reach out to us and join us. So thank you again for everything, keep going with everything. Thank you for tonight. Don't forget to bid at our silent auction, and we'll see you tomorrow at the conference. So thank you. Okay.
Okay, now to give some closing remarks, I'd like to invite up Andrea McChristian. Andrea is on the YANA board. She is with the Southern Poverty Law Center, came up from Washington, D.C. to join us tonight. How about a big hand for Andrea?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. As Ken mentioned, my name is Andrea McChristian. I'm class of 08, and I am, okay, 08. Oh, wait, we were in Calhoun together. Oh my gosh, okay. So I'm in the college formerly known as Calhoun, and glad to see a classmate here as well. I wanted to put another pitch in for the silent auction. You have 20 minutes left. The silent auction ends at 9, so there are QR codes on your tables. Please use them. My family's condo in Belize is up for the silent auction in San Pedro. I can tell you it's beautiful, lots to do. I'm not biased at all, but I would encourage you all to bid on that if you'd like. I really want to say that, not in an arrogant way, but I feel like I'm the epitome of generation to generation. My dad, Tim McChristian, class of 77, who I know several of you in the room know, grew up in South Central, oh hi, how are you? Grew up in South Central Los Angeles, not that far from where Ken grew up as a child as well. Through a nonprofit, A Better Chance, he was able to attend Phillips Academy, I see some nodding, he was able to attend Phillips Academy Andover, and then ultimately attend Yale University. My dad, after spending 35 years at IBM in corporate America, actually having the opportunity to be the first Black executive to go overseas in IBM's history, left IBM and went into the nonprofit sector and is now executive director of Madison Boys and Girls Club here in the city. He's very sorry he couldn't be here today. He's actually in Bangkok right now visiting with the first grandchild of the family, which my brother had and his wife had a few months ago. So when I came to Yale and was heavily from birth kind of paving the way to go to Yale, on the path to go to Yale, my parents always told me, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so during my Yale career, I made sure that I gave back at every turn through working with mentoring programs, through becoming co-president of the Yale NAACP, because I knew that was the responsibility that I had upon myself. And so after about a year and a half in corporate litigation after law school and realizing I did not want to be a litigator and switching to the nonprofit sector, the first thing my dad told me was, do you know Ken? And are you looped into YANA? And so very quickly, I realized that there was a family for me in the nonprofit sector as a second-generation Yalie, as a second-generation Yalie within the nonprofit space, and a second-generation Black Yalie within the nonprofit space, where I'd be able to have a network. I'd be able to learn what it means to be part of the nonprofit sector, including on a board, through webinars where I was first able to attend, then through panels on those webinars, then through hosting webinars, and then as a member of the board. And so I really want to encourage you all to look at me, to look at what, through YANA, through the nonprofit sector, through the passing the torch on, we've been able to accomplish, and know that your donation will be able to do the same. Where hopefully people in this room, your children will go to Yale, they'll join YANA, and they'll be able to continue the tradition. So again, I encourage you to donate. I encourage you to make a bid for the silent auction, including on that Belize condo. I also would like to thank our sponsors. We have many of them, and thank you all in the room for giving your time, giving your resources, and just thank you all for being here tonight with us.
You guys have been great. It was a very exciting program. I really enjoyed all the speeches, and I thank everybody for coming. Please have some cookies and coffee and finish up at the bar. And thank you all again so much for coming.